Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers. We're talking all things Colorado Rockies. It's a casual Friday episode. On the day of recording, no Rockies game is being played, so no game recap. Trade deadline has come and gone, so we don't have to speculate or give too much thoughts there. So instead, we're going to be talking about a few different stories in today's episode. We're going to be talking about a Rockies pitching prospect who's played well in the minors but has been on the IL for a few weeks now. We'll also talk about my favorite trade of the season. And of course, wrapping up today's show, we will talk about this series against St. Louis Cardinals that kicks off a 9-game road trip for our beloved Colorado Rockies. And let's start today's show talking about a news story in itself because there has just been no coverage and no news stories, and that is of Chris Bryant. It's just kind of it's weird. Maybe it's not weird because we all just kind of know the inevitable, but there really hasn't been any talk or coverage of Chris Bryant since really February or March when it was announced, hey, he's going to start the season on the 60-day IL. We haven't really heard anything since then. There was the drama with the Cubs, where they accused the Rockies of not allowing Bryant to go to the parade. The Rockies said, of course, he was allowed to go for their anniversary of their World Series. That was really the only news story we've had of Chris Bryant. When it comes to actually playing baseball, when it comes to rehab, when it comes to being with the team, we really haven't heard anything. And obviously it's a really unfortunate circumstance for Bryant with his with the disease he has. It's lumbar degenerative disc disease. We've talked about it on the show before where he's just in pain, right? Like just walking around, he is in pain. And so it is an unfortunate situation in that sense. It's an unfortunate situation because the Rockies have him on the books through 2028. He'll be making $26 million a year. And it's an unfortunate situation because we really have no idea what's going on. And on one hand, I obviously feel for Chris Bryant because it's like, man, your career has been completely sidelined from this disease. And to be just in pain, simply getting up and moving is a really, really awful thing. Then when you put on the Rockies cap, you're like, man, this also really sucks for the Rockies because they're paying a guy an insane amount of money, right? This is a contract that was $180 million. It goes down as one of the worst contracts in baseball history, because you pair that alongside the terrible trade of Nolan Arenado. And it is just bad all around. And so this update is almost just to remind you, hey, Chris Bryant is still on the roster. And there still aren't any answers of what is next for him. You hope maybe they can have like an Anthony Rendon treatment where maybe you stretch out that contract more and hopefully can just make payroll a little bit easier. Or maybe, the Walton Penners just say, hey, we'll just eat this. It's one Walmart essentially for this contract and we're willing to sacrifice it. Just finding a way to fix the dilemma that this contract creates as this team continues to build the roster. Now, 2028 is around that time where the Rockies should expect to really find their groove. So it's not the worst case ever for, when this contract ends. It is, though, just this real mess of a situation that the Rockies front offices of old have left us in. And, Dave Podesta and company are going to have to just find a way to clean up the mess. So I genuinely looked in so many different places, just seeing if there was any sort of Chris Bryant update. As someone written an article, but you know what? This is it, right? Like if some poor soul gets sucked into searching, they might get on the search page A and it's like, hey, Rockies Daily, maybe he has something. I'm looking too, brother. I'm looking to find out what's going on with Kris Bryant. But again, awful situation for him, for fans, the front office. I say awful just because of the disease he is dealing with. Like, that's terrible. He is making $27 million, so that is obviously a nice consolation. But man, it just stings. It just stings, and it just is it's just weird that we just haven't heard anything, but it might just be, hey, there's writing on the wall. He's never coming back, and just accept it. And I think that's probably what the most likely answer is. But it's just been very quiet. And another thing that's been very quiet are Rockies pitching prospects. Last episode, I talked a lot about hitting prospects for the Rockies. Like 8 of their top 10 prospects are infielders and outfielders. They don't have a lot of top pitching prospects. If you look at the scouting grade through MLB, the scouting grade for a lot of these Rockies pitchers is about a 45 is the top grade. And for a 45, that's slightly below average. I think it goes all the way up to like 80, where that's obviously a great prospect. For example, Holiday, Brito, a lot of those guys are 55s. Might top out at 60, which is an above average or a good prospect. But why am I talking about that today is Jackson Cox is the highest rated prospect in the Rockies farm system. He's the number 6 prospect. He does come in with that 45 scout grade that I mentioned. But look, he's a 2022 second-round pick. He is in that same draft class as Gabriel Hughes, Sterling Thompson, Jordan Beck. A pretty solid class, all things considered. When you just look around at a lot of the other Rockies draft classes, this one you have a couple guys who have obviously made it to the major league level. Gabriel Hughes, that we've talked about, I think can actually have an impact in the starting rotation. Jordan Beck, yeah, we'll see. Sterling Thompson, I don't think so. But hey, look, you have a couple guys that made it to the major league level. It could be worse, is what I'm getting at. And Jordan Cox is an interesting prospect because the Rockies in 2022, they went with a pretty college-heavy draft class. A lot of guys who were college players. Jackson Cox was not that. He was an 18-year-old that the Rockies took in the second round, 50th pick overall. And started to find his groove in 2023 before he needed Tommy John surgery. Was out all of 2024. Finally got some momentum in 25. In 2026, we've really started to see him flourish. Up until July 24th, he was the strikeout leader in minor league baseball, right? So he has obviously found a knack for making guys miss. He was promoted to Double-A in June, where he had over 44 strikeouts. And in his last 3 starts, he gave him 18 innings pitched, just 2 runs allowed, and 18 strikeouts. So pretty solid numbers for him there. The one mystery is on July 24th, he was put on 7-day IL, and we haven't heard much since. Another one of those cases where I was looking through the MLB's website. I was looking through different just social media posts. I'm searching his name. I'm looking through the Hartford Yard Goats, just social media transactions, and just 7-day IL. So we don't have a lot of information. You think it could be related, obviously, to his Tommy John, to that elbow. Who knows? We just don't have much information there. And so that is one of the mysteries under Cox. But to reel it back in and to talk a little bit more about him, his fastball velocity can top out at 95, but what he's really known for is just a really nasty curveball and his breaking ball. Now, those are 2 pitches that could possibly struggle at altitude, but you can't really worry about that until he gets to the major league level. And so if he's making guys miss now, that is obviously important as he continues to put this portfolio together. His control could be better. That fastball, as I mentioned, could be better. But ultimately, can he stay healthy? It is a common theme that we've now seen from some of these Rockies prospects. Chase Dollander just needed a season-ending surgery. Gabriel Hughes obviously missed a season. And now, obviously, Jackson Cox, we're talking about him. He's missed a season. They've just had a lot of guys that have dealt with some form of injury. And for Cox, he is expected to be a 2028 call-up. There were some rumblings that maybe he gets promoted to Albuquerque. With his injury, though, it could be something where, hey, let's see if you can get healthy and finish out the season at Hartford before you start 2027 in AAA. He's a guy, though, that could be a starting caliber pitcher for the Colorado Rockies. And again, he is one of the higher prospects for the Rockies. He's the top pitching prospect. That's not to say because he's a top pitching prospect, he's going to perform as a top pitcher. It's more so, hey, look, the barrel is pretty empty, but there is something kind of nice in there. Brody Beck being the other guy in the top 10, and then you have a couple other guys in the top 20. But Jackson Cox, you obviously hope that 7-day IL, it's nothing more. But until then, we just kind of have to wait for updates. But it is important to keep your eye on someone and a name that we should expect to really start to make some splashes in 2027 and then especially in 2028. But there's one guy who's made one massive splash, and he really has been my favorite acquisition all year. It's TJ Rumfield. McCarthy has been phenomenal. He has also been just a pure joy to watch. But I think TJ Rumfield has been absolutely phenomenal. I've talked about him on the show quite a few times, but it is just worth noting time and time again. They give up a reliever who had like a 7 or 8 ERA in Chevy. They trade him away for TJ Rumfield, who wasn't going to get time in New York. He earns the starting spot at first base. And now he is in close contention for Rookie of the Year. Even if he doesn't win it, he's won Rookie of the Month twice. And he's just been a really positive contributor. He leads the team in at-bats, but he also is first in WAR, third in batting average, fourth in OPS, 58 RBIs on the year. He just is so smooth at the plate. You just don't feel worried if he even falls behind an account 0-2, 1-2, because he doesn't strike out very often with a team that does sometimes like to strike out a lot. He's just a really calm presence at the plate. Also, he's just massive. So when there is a bad throw over to first, there is still an opportunity for Rumfield to get it because he's just a behemoth on the bag. But it is just not only a hat tip to the front office for being able to find someone that could be potentially a good fit at first, but it's also a hat tip to Rumfield for producing and performing and developing right before our eyes. And he's really been this way since April. He came out, it was like, oh, this guy's actually pretty good. And it was just kind of waiting around, like, is he going to hold up? Him and Troy Johnson both. Troy Johnson's kind of regressed into maybe what we were expecting him to be. TJ Rumfield, though, has been just consistently good throughout the season. And it really is one of the more unbelievable trades that the Rockies made, where they were kind of looking bargain bin and absolutely struck gold. They struck gold with Rumfield. They struck gold with Jake McCarthy. And those are the kind of moves that can really help improve that timeline that Paul De Podesta always talks about. They want to find any way they can to help accelerate the rebuild process. Finding guys like TJ Rumfield help accelerate the process, because Rumfield isn't a 1 or 2 year rental. He is a guy that I expect to be on the Rockies for quite some time. And that is impactful, because as a GM and as a front office, and when you're making your search to try to fit and fill positional needs, when you can look at first base and say, hey, that position is taken care of, we're good, that's really important. So they can look at first base and say that. They can look at catcher and say that. And they can honestly look at most of that outfield and say, hey, there are other positions of need right now. This doesn't need to be a big focus. And that's honestly a really beneficial thing to a front office. Now, the things of need for the Colorado Rockies, I'm talking like the things of need. It's like, they just need one more guy. They still need quite a bit of help, but it is a very, very needed find that this front office had. And honestly, because of Rumfield's success, it honestly has also helped contribute to the logjam in the outfield, because Rumfield's just kind of earned his role as an everyday guy. And because there were talks, hey, maybe Condon can play first, Freeman can maybe play first. Like, all these other names are mentioned to play first. And it's like, hey, this is a base that's kind of off limits for the foreseeable future because of how good TJ Rumfield has been. So really great stuff. Those are the kind of trades that the Rockies will need. They will also have to probably make some big hit trades as well. But to be able to offer a reliever who was just sent back down to AAA because he gets shelled against St. Louis, you give someone up like that for a guy who's going to finish at least top 5. My thought is hopefully top 3 in Rookie of the Year. That's a great hit from a front office. So TJ Rumfield, favorite acquisition of the year. I know we've got another month and a half left, but he's been awesome. He's a part of this core, and he fits the timeline, and that's what I love about it too. He's not 33 years old, and it's like this poor old dog. He's got one last bark in him. It's like, no, this guy is meant to stay for the future. Finally, let's wrap up today's show on this Cash Flow Friday, talking about this 9-game road trip, but more specifically, the Rockies have a 3-game dance with the St. Louis Cardinals. And this is an important series. They've got St. Louis, then Arizona, and then San Francisco. So 2 of those 3 teams are currently outside of the playoffs looking in, but St. Louis just 4 games back of Arizona. So this is a St. Louis team that is playing for something still, even though they're a few games under 500. Ryan Feltner, Kyle Freeland, Michael Lorenzen on the mound in St. Louis. But Lorenzen away from Coors Field is okay. Like, he's not terrible away from Coors Field. It's just when he's pitching that Coors, you might as well put a T in front of the batting box because there's just not much hope there. But look, this is a pretty important series just for the sake of the Rockies avoiding 100 losses. They can't afford too many more sweeps. And this Cardinals team is not the juggernaut team that they will have to worry about a little bit later on in the season, like the Dodgers, like the Yankees. So you need to pick up one. The hope is maybe you can sneak out a series win just to get that opportunity of avoiding 100 losses, because that's where we're at in the season. Just try to avoid 100 losses. But that'll do it for today's Rockies Daily. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Thanks so much for tuning in. If this is your first time, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, share. You know the whole drill. YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, 5 stars, share. Regardless, I really, really appreciate you listening and getting to this point of the episode. Have a great weekend. Go Rockies, and I will see you on Monday.